So let's take a look at some of these examples because we're going to see that they're not going to be perfect according to the color wheel, but they still look good. So here's an example of monochromatic. We see one main tone going on here. If you Google monochromatic photography, you're going to see a lot of black and white images, gray images, but I wanted to highlight that you can have colored monochrome. It doesn't always have to be black and white, but I guess that's just kind of what's in when you think of monochromatic. It can be pulled off a lot easier. Here's another example, which is monochromatic, at least to my colorblind eyes. I guess this could also border on analogous, so we don't just see one main color in here. But I think for the overall feel of it, it does look pretty monochromatic. Here's an example of our complementary colors, right? We have red, we have green. So if we look at our color wheel up on the top left here, we have red, we have green. But of course, this is definitely more of like that pure red, whereas this green apple is definitely kind of more bordering on the lighter green side, right? Maybe not, somewhere in the yellow greens, but again, we have a pure red and maybe like a lighter green. If you remember those smaller circles, it might be somewhere more in here. But we still have those complementary colors, the opposite side of our color wheel. Here's another example, red bell pepper with that green stem and the green background. Here's a good example of our yellows and our purples, right? We have our yellow here, but you can also see that it's not necessarily this kind of purple, right? It does kind of seem to border maybe more in the middle as well. But again, we have a yellow, we have a purple. We do have some green in here as well, which I guess you could make the argument with that green. This actually becomes more of that split complementary, right? We have our purple somewhere more around here, and then it splits to a yellow and a darker green. So that's a good example there. This is going to be an example of analogous, because we got our, if I put up the color wheel here, we do have this more of this kind of purple here, but now we definitely have our blues as well. So we kind of are sticking into this side of the color wheel here. Another example of what I would call analogous. But here's a good example of where you see a whole bunch of colors on the color wheel. I don't know if color theory would even call it analogous at this point, but we have these oranges down here. So we're starting at orange, and then we're moving our way through the reds, through the purples, and maybe even into the blue a little bit up here. So we're seeing a big chunk, like half of this color wheel, maybe even more than half. So would you still call this analogous? I don't know, but I wanted to show this as an example that, of course, our photographs don't need to stick to this color theory wheel to not look good, right? Even though analogous usually says let's stick to 3, this one is sticking to half the color wheel, still looks good. Okay, this one is definitely a better example of analogous because we're dealing with yellow, green, and green for sure. Nothing else in this photo really stands out for any other color, so this is a solid 3-colored analogous photo. This, I would argue, would also be pretty similar, right? We have those lighter greens, the yellowish greens, moving into our aquas or turquoises, right? Into that blue. So yeah, this would definitely be another example of analogous. Now this one was interesting, for my eyes at least, because I first see this photo and I'm like, okay, this is good complementary. Because we have orange, it's directly across from blue, bluish purple, orange to blue. So I think my first thought was, yeah, complementary. But then you can also see quite a bit of red in this photo as well, right? And maybe even some turquoise a little bit. So maybe it is more of a split complementary because you get a little bit of that turquoise, but you also get some red in here as well. So it's a little interesting for this one. But if I had to call it something, orange to blue would probably be the main thing. But again, it does have some red, so maybe it is kind of more of like a split complementary. Something like this. It's not perfect, but again, it doesn't have to be. As long as you have something close to split complementary in this case, it's gonna tie together very well. So this is one I would definitely call a split complementary. If we look at our color wheel here, we start with our nice orange flowers, right? And then what other colors do we see here? Blue sky, definitely we're going to split this way. And what do we have? We have our greens, so we're going to split this way as well. So it's not exactly a pure split complementary. It would be more of this reddish kind of orange, unless my eyes are mistaking these flowers for this kind of orange. But either way, it's close. It works very, very well. So now how about this one? We're seeing some more examples. So what colors do we see? We see this kind of blue turquoise, I think, background. See this bright orange shirt, red hair. So what colors do we have? We have the light orange, we have our red hair, reddish orange, and then we have our turquoise background. So this looks pretty much like a triad to me. I guess the exact triad would be down this way, but it's close, right? And that's just kind of the big message I want to push with this color theory. It doesn't have to be exact, but if you do start throwing random colors together, they might clash. If they're not close, they might clash. All right, what's next? This one kind of hurts my eyes because so many colors are going on here. I don't even know what to call them all. We got some purples, we got some greens, we got some oranges, reds. We got quite a bit going on. So we got some purple-ish, lighter purple, blue. We got some of this orange color. So here's an example of where you do have different colors. Would this be a triad? Green, purple, orange. I think this might be a good triad right here. Somewhere close to that. But again, this would be a light, like if we have those inner circles like we saw earlier, it would be somewhere more on the lighter side, whereas the orange would be definitely more on the darker side, and our greens are on the darker side as well. So again, it doesn't have to be very exact.